Hulu buried a Marvel animated universe deal that would have changed everything, and the reason they killed it is something they never wanted you to know. In 2019, 5 shows were greenlit. A crossover event was planned. The contracts were signed, the writers were hired, and Marvel's most unhinged, adult-skewing characters were finally going to get the platform they deserved. Then, in the span of 18 months, almost all of it disappeared. Not because the shows were bad. Not because audiences weren't interested. Because someone higher up the food chain decided the money was better spent somewhere else, and buried the evidence that this ever came close to happening. Here's what you were never supposed to put together. It started in early 2019. Hulu was in a peculiar position, partially owned by Disney, partially by Comcast and AT&T, sitting in a kind of corporate no-man's land. Marvel Television, at the time still run by Jeff Loeb and operating largely independent of Kevin Feige's Marvel Studios, was hunting for a streaming home for its stranger, darker properties. The ones that didn't fit Disney's family-friendly lane. The ones Netflix had no interest in. A deal between Hulu and Marvel Television made almost too much sense. Hulu needed prestige content to compete. Marvel needed a platform that wouldn't flinch. Loeb pitched a slate of adult animated series, irreverent, violent, and completely unlike anything Marvel had put on screen before. Hulu said yes. The deal was real. 5 animated series were officially announced at San Diego Comic-Con in July 2019. MODOK, a supervillain comedy starring Patton Oswalt. Hit Monkey, a Japanese assassin monkey action series. Tigra and Dazzler, Howard the Duck. And a planned crossover event called The Offenders, which would unite all 5 characters in a shared animated universe sitting entirely on Hulu. Industry trade publications reported the combined development budget across the slate at north of $50 million. Writers were in rooms. Storyboards existed. Oswalt recorded lines. This wasn't a pitch deck. It was a production, and you almost certainly never heard any of it described that way. Then the walls started closing in. By October 2019, Disney had formally taken majority control of Hulu, buying out AT&T's stake for $1.43 billion. And in December of that same year, something else happened, something that barely made headlines but changed everything inside Marvel. Kevin Feige was handed control of all Marvel creative output, absorbing Marvel Television directly into Marvel Studios. Jeff Loeb was out. The entire infrastructure that had built Daredevil, Jessica Jones, and the Hulu animated slate was dismantled in a matter of weeks. The people who made the deal were gone. The people who inherited the deal had no reason to honor its spirit. Here's the part they really buried. The Hulu animated slate wasn't killed because of low quality or budget overruns. It was killed because it was inconvenient. When Disney completed its Hulu takeover and Feige consolidated Marvel creative control, a strategic decision was made. Disney Plus was the priority. Every Marvel dollar, every Marvel IP, every Marvel eyeball needed to flow toward the new flagship service, not toward a platform Disney didn't fully control and didn't fully believe in. The Offenders crossover died first, quietly, with no announcement. Then Tigra and Dazzler vanished without a single frame filmed. Howard the Duck followed. MODOK made it to air in 2021 and was canceled after 1 season with no renewal discussion. Hit Monkey survived 2 seasons, a small audience, and a show that actively jokes about being forgotten. The contracts guaranteeing development funding were honored in the narrowest legal sense. The creative vision was not. Remember that signed deal from July 2019. Here's exactly where it died, in a boardroom decision made in December of that year that had nothing to do with whether the shows were good and everything to do with which platform would win. $50 million in development commitments. 5 greenlit shows. A shared animated universe that would have given Marvel's adult audience something genuinely different, darker, stranger, funnier than anything in the MCU. And instead of launching it, Disney quietly let it dissolve while building What If. For Disney Plus, What If? A show aimed at a younger demographic with softer stakes, distributed on a platform Disney fully owned. You were never supposed to notice that the math worked out that way on purpose. The cost is still being paid. Hitmonkey has a devoted cult following and almost no marketing support. The Offenders crossover remains one of the most compelling, unproduced events in Marvel's streaming history. A generation of adult Marvel fans who watched Daredevil on Netflix and wanted that same creative risk-taking in animation got nothing. Because the calculus at Disney Plus said consolidation was worth more than range. So here's the question no one is asking out loud. If Hulu had stayed independent long enough to actually launch The Offenders, would Disney Plus have been forced to take adult Marvel content seriously from the start? And if the answer is yes, which executive made the call that one platform dominating was worth more than two competing? We don't have that name yet, but there's another studio, another buried deal, and another internal decision that points straight at it. And somehow, that story is even messier than this one.